As tensions continue to escalate between Iran and the United States and Israel, thousands of activists demonstrated across the globe Saturday against war and sanctions in Iran and in support of that country's pro-democracy movement. In New York City, hundreds marched from Times Square to the United Nations. Groups are organizing with a heightened sense of urgency. Israeli officials have publicly suggested future military action, and the U.S. and European Union have stepped up sanctions. Iran, in turn, has ratcheted up its own rhetoric, threatening to retaliate against countries that allow for hostile operations against Iran. The protest started with a rally at New York's Times Square, where Henry Invavian, a supporter of Iran's Green Movement, said he opposes military action.
We feel very strongly that there is no need for any kind of intervention, military attack or war. This is just going to create a third world war. It's going to create more terrorism, and as it is, U.S. is in big trouble. It's not even good for America, for this country we live in, to get into another war with Iran, while still we have problems with Iraq and with Afghanistan.
On Monday, President Obama and the Treasury Department announced new sanctions against Iran, freezing all assets of the Iranian central bank and government. Iranian-American activist Sarah Azadi says sanctions and war with Iran will hurt the general public and only serve to strengthen the current regime.
Activists and journalists are being jailed, and the movement is no longer on the streets. But we here in the United States can make sure we hold our government accountable, no war and no sanctions, so that there is that breathing room, there is that space, so that we're not looking at a country where everyone has to gather around one cause of sovereignty and be co-opted into joining with the regime because they have to be anti-war. And frankly, the economic situation there right now is so dire with unemployment and inflation that the sanctions are further hurting any possibility for change, democratic change.
Azadi, like other Iranian Americans, are careful to make the distinction that their anti-war stance is not an endorsement of Iran's current regime, which they say suppresses democracy.
It's important to have a message of both no war and no sanctions, but also building bridges with our activist counterparts in Iran, because there is a democratic movement in Iran. It's being very, very violently suppressed.
Also taking part in the rally was Columbia University professor Hamid Dabashi.
At this stage of the game, there is absolutely no difference between Obama and Bush.
He drew parallels between the lead-up to the war in Iraq 9 years ago under the Bush administration and today.
It is now February, reminiscent of February 2003, when hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers were out demonstrating against the war in Iraq. And yet again, we're almost 10 years later, fearful for a war in Iran.
Dabashi says only a global movement of concerned citizens will be able to stop the escalations.
The solution is a united front by ordinary people from United States, Europe, Arab world, Islamic world, Iran, to stand up against this politics of despair. People are up against these politics of despair in the Arab world, Islamic world, all around the globe. And United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, they want to pull back the situation to a status quo ante and control the circumstances. It will not happen. We need to take control of our destiny and the destiny of our children.
Anti-war activists vow to keep pressing for a just and non-violent resolution to the conflict. Reporting for the Real News Network and FSRN, this is Jess Lenore in New York.